Welcome to AT&T Stadium for the Matt Bowers Auto Group pregame show. The Saints play the Cowboys today. It's going to be a big game for the Saints. It's kind of the factor fiction time of year. A lot of people win week one, and then week two's really kind of when you find out what you are. There's a lot of coaches that say they would actually rather win in week two than they would in week one because week two's a little bit more meaningful. Saints obviously had the huge win against Carolina last week, 47-10. Made a real big statement there. I think they showed some people some things on offense. I think they showed themselves some things on offense. But this is a much bigger test this week against the Carolina Panthers. What do they need to do to sustain their momentum and come out of here 2-0?
They need to make it look like it wasn't all fake. I mean, look, we talk about the offensive line so much that people probably tune it out when they hear the words offensive line, but that's what we would be talking about in any era of Saints football when they're going against Michael Parsons, Tank Lawrence, one of the best pass rushers in football, led the NFL with 6 sacks last week, 17 quarterback hits last week when the Cowboys played Cleveland. So immediately you're like, oh, was that real? Well, let's test it against Mike Tyson. You know, it's like they're going to find out in a big way. And we probably won't even find out because if they get punched in the mouth by this defense, that doesn't prove anything either because this is as tough a test as you're going to find in the entire NFL.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Huge thing today. We're going to be watching for 2 inactives here in about 19 minutes. Taliesa Fuaga and Marshawn Lattimore, the 2 big questionable players right now. We saw Fuaga out here warming up, going through his stance and everything. My expectation, if I'm guessing right now, and I could be definitely proven wrong in 19 minutes here, my guess is Fuaga plays, Lattimore doesn't. We just haven't seen Lattimore try to push through anything in the last 2 years, and he's hurt right now. I kind of just got to go with what history has shown us, but if he does play, I feel much better about this game, I think. But Fuaga, for me, is the big one. You get him out there, I think you have a chance to win the game.
Well, look, you've made the point that you, over time, have trusted the Saints' ability to win with backup cornerbacks. Dennis Allen's done a good job of it. Joe Woods has done a good job of it. But I'm a little more pessimistic. Like, if Kool-Aid McKinstry's on the outside – and if Alontae Taylor is in the slot where CeeDee Lamb spends a lot of his time, they're going to test Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry a lot. And just because they've done it with other guys in the past, those are inexperienced guys. And obviously Paulson Adebo on the other side. We're seeing Brandon Cooks. He's probably going to be in camera view at some point. He's been warming up right behind us. I think he could have a big day if they focus all of their efforts on making sure that CeeDee Lamb doesn't beat us. There could be one-on-one opportunities for Brandon Cook against a rookie today.
Yeah, the one argument for that, the worry about, okay, yeah, they've plugged in guys, they've played, they've been fine the last 2 years without Lattimore, kind of by and large. The one big argument for that would be last year's game against the Rams. They got lit up by them. Lattimore was out of that game. They couldn't figure out a way to slow down the Rams' weapons, and they got lit up in that game. But it was Thursday night. They didn't have a full week to prepare. I did talk to one player on the team just over the weekend. He said that Kool-Aid had a good week of practice, and if he has to start, they are confident that he's going to be ready to go, ready to play. I think we'd see him on the outside. Alontae would stay in the slot. I do – look, they don't have a ton on this offense. And then if you take Ferguson out, who is doubtful, it is kind of Dak and CeeDee with a little bit of Cook sprinkled in. If you're telling me that DA's got to figure out just kind of how to shut down one guy, and granted, maybe the best receiver in the NFL is between him and Tyreek Hill in my book, that's a huge test. And he is probably going to get open. He is going to probably get yards. But if you can cut the head off that snake and block on offense, like, you might have a chance. But it's a huge task to come up with, and it is potentially a rookie in his very first game. And I thought his camp was a little bit shakier than expected. Fair. Missed a little bit of time with injury. I think it is a huge question mark. I don't think you take anything for granted.
On the flip side, though, this is not the December 2023 Rams offense. The Cowboys have lots of question marks themselves, including 2 rookies starting for them on the offensive line. Their left tackle is Tyler Guyton, who was drafted 15 picks behind Taliesa Fuaga, and everyone thought Fuaga was a lot more NFL ready than him. I think when we talked about the Saints potentially drafting Guyton, we wondered if he would be a year 2 starter, not a week 1 starter. And then they've got a 3rd-round pick at center, Cooper Beebe, who is also starting for them. So 2 starting rookies on their offensive line kind of adds to the fact that the Saints aren't the only team with offensive line question marks in the NFL.
What else? What else are you looking for today? What's the big thing?
I've been trying to find Clint Kubiak and Mike Zimmer. I was wondering how animated Clint Kubiak would be when he saw his old mentor out here. As we said, that's one of my favorite matchups of the game. I mean, in Clint Kubiak, we trust so much after just seeing one game, but now he's going to go against one of the top defensive masterminds in the league who knows him better than anyone. Does Clint Kubiak's stuff work against this front, against that defensive coordinator? Absolutely. I mean, this is true of minicamp. This is true of OTAs. It was true of week 1, but more true than ever today. What has Clint Kubiak got?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's a huge game for him. Maybe a little bit of surprise last week. For me, I mean, I think they gotta make sure they don't let Dallas get out to a lead in this game. It's everything. It's everything. You can't
and
let
that's Dallas's MO.
You can't let them get a 2-touchdown lead because then it's over. You aren't running the ball. Everything's on Derek Carr. I think you are a good team when Derek Carr doesn't have to throw you back into it. I think if you're going to start chasing in this game, it takes everything away, and then it makes play action ineffective. And I think one of the things about play action for a passer like Derek that can be tentative at times about pulling the trigger or being super aggressive, play action kind of forces you into making aggressive, quick decisions down the field. And we saw one last week to Shaheed with pressure closing in. I think if you're just doing true drop back and he's reading the field, I don't think you get that throw. So if you take the run game out, you're taking play action out. That means Parsons is teeing off on you. That means Tank's able to tee off on you. That means Derek is in those looks. I think it just kind of all falls apart. So you have to keep the game close. You have to start fast. Your defense has to perform. I think there's so much on it. We got a question here from Noah on the NOF website. He said, how often do you see the Saints using Taysom Hill this game? Do they shy away from the run game if Dallas has game plans for it?
Well, I was just going to say this even before the question came in. We're also worried about the Saints' ability to protect against this defense. The Saints have to be able to run the ball today. They have to. They need to run on first down and then have it be 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 3, which would be even better. 2nd and 1 last week when they had the 9-yard run on the first play of the game. This offensive line has to be able to run the ball today, and Taysom Hill has to be a big part of that. I mean, I think he should be RB2 for this team. I think it should be Alvin and Taysom, sprinkle in some Jamal Williams. If they can't do that today, I don't see a plan for them winning.
Yeah, we had Derek Carr up on the screen. What are we expecting to see from Derek today? Are you a buyer in what we saw last week?
I trust Derek Carr. I kind of always trusted Derek Carr. I was a little surprised when he got off to an uneven start last year on some of the easy throws, like slants being on time and stuff like that. But that's what I think we're going to see today. I think we're going to see get it out of Derek Carr's hands quickly. 5-yard passes would be huge wins in this game. Just stay ahead of the chains, because I think when he's gotten in trouble throughout his Saints career, it's been 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 15, or that's when he's not at his best and they're not at his best. I want to see a lot of I have a feeling Clint Kubiak's game plan will be stay out of the chains today, whether that's run game or quick passes. And I think Derek Carr can do that.
Yeah, he's got to look out for Diggs today. Diggs is a very dangerous player. His coverage isn't the stickiest in the world, but he's really good at kind of closing them windows with his length. That's the one thing I'm looking for today. Like, if he can stay out of those mistakes, because I think if you watch Dallas, like, Dak will give you an opportunity to take the ball away. I think he's one of the smarter QBs in the league. He reads defenses really well. He does a great job of getting them into the perfect play. He sets the protection really well. But he does make a couple throws every game where the ball's up for grabs. If Derek can win that turnover battle versus Dak, the defense takes the ball away, I think they have a chance to win this game. I am kind of a believer in what we saw last week because there was no pressure. The difference this week, though, is that there is going to be pressure. That's the real barometer. I mean, I think every quarterback in the NFL is good without pressure on him. There isn't a guy starting a game anywhere in the NFL this week except maybe in Green Bay where you say, well, look, if you protect him, he's going to be able to, So that is everybody.
Both teams +2 in turnover ratio, and the one positive element for the Saints that we haven't talked about, I think we trust in their defensive line now. If you're talking about creating turnovers, we think Chase Young has an ability to make Dak uncomfortable, especially if he's going against a rookie left tackle and an even bigger question mark at right tackle for the Cowboys. Those are big question marks for them too.
Billy asks, what do we learn if the Saints come away from a victory? I think a lot. I think a whole lot. This is the litmus test. Like, week 1 was great. That's kind of the opener against like a Nickel State or whatever. And then you play the big dog the next week and you kind of find out what you're really made of in that game. I mean, I can't think of a better factor fiction type equation here than that. I mean, they got a great defense. They got good corners. They got good players on offense. Like, if you can shut them down and win this game, you're 2-0, and then I think you're set up, and I think everything's in front of you. Next week, Philadelphia is a tough game. We'll kind of find out what Atlanta is today, too. But if you win this game, I think you are in position very much so to be in the driver's seat to potentially, I think you're well on your way to a playoff run. And it's early to say that, but 2-0 is huge right now with the way the schedule's set up.
So many things. One of my biggest fears of this whole team, I think we all picked the Saints to be an 8-9, 9-8 team this year, but one of our biggest fears was how do they avoid a 2-4 start? Not only would you be beating the Cowboys in Dallas, one of the toughest games on your entire schedule, you'd be ahead of the chains early in the season, which I did not think this schedule would allow them to do. If they can start this season comfortably and find their groove, if they can get the confidence boost of this would be one of their biggest wins in years. They haven't beaten top teams. They've beaten the bottom feeders, they've lost to the better teams, and they've stayed in the middle. This would be huge for this team. It really would be.
I think they can make a statement too with just a competitive loss too.
Yeah.
Like statement's maybe a strong word, but I think you can maintain.
Maintain what you that momentum that you started.
Yeah,
with.
And look, if they're a team that can beat up on the teams they're supposed to beat up on, and
the schedule's full of opportunities to beat up on teams you're supposed to beat up on later. You just don't want to be 2-4 or 2-5 when that happens.
Yeah. Look, I think they're in a decent position to make a statement today, one way or the other. You just can't get your ass kicked. Like that's really the main thing.
Yeah.
You come out here and you get your ass kicked. It kind of undoes everything that you saw in Week 1, especially because Fuaga is going to play today. So I think that's
it's official.
I think that's an important thing there. So you'll be able to block a little bit, and then you'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, Fuaga, and we haven't mentioned the name Trevor Penning yet. He remains the biggest question mark on the team. I think last week was huge for him, though. We talk about his confidence all the time. How could playing 70 snaps at a high level in a game not boost his confidence? It was the best game of his career, by far. There's not even a contender for second best game of his career. I think he really needed that. I think that'll help him. He's going to have his hands full, though, and he's going to lose several times today.
All right, so how do you think they go at Lamb and Parsons? I'll start with Parsons. I think you kind of take a little bit of the Clowney playbook from last week. I think you got to try to run at him. I think you got to widen that edge a little bit by chipping and bringing somebody over there to help. Play action is going to help a lot. Look, one of the main things they did last week that I thought was great about their approach is they had an early third down, they run the ball, and then that's in your head the whole entire game. They get 17 yards on it, even better. You have to respect it every single time. Those are tricks you cannot pull out of your hat if you are losing. You cannot run the ball on third down because you're running the ball there and you don't care if you got a punt. You're telling them, hey, we are willing to run the ball here and you have to respect it. And if you cheat on it, we're going to attack that edge. And you come trying to shoot in through that gap, we're going to take it and bounce it to the outside and we're going to get the first down. Even if you got a punt there, it's fine. But if you are down by 10 points, you cannot punt. So the way to attack Parsons is by having the lead or keeping the game close. And if you can do that long enough, maybe you give yourself a chance. You cannot get behind early. I think that first drive is just – I think it's huge in this game. I think you got to come out. I think you got to start fast. Like on one of those first two drives, you got to get some points because home games last year, they averaged 8 points a game in the first quarter. That was more than any other team. The second team was like 6, and then everybody else was like 4 or 5. They play great here. They get this crowd behind them. You just don't want to allow that to happen. 17 straight wins in the regular season in this building. They did lose their playoff game here last year, but 17 straight regular season wins in here. This is a really tough opponent. It's a tough place to play. As for CeeDee Lamb, what the plan is for him, I think you don't oversell to beat CeeDee Lamb. Obviously you want to give guys like Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry help, but what you don't want to do is you want to realize, okay, maybe he's going to have 10 catches for 130 yards in this game. Let's make sure he's not doing it behind the back, over the top of our defense, and let's make sure we're not ignoring Brandon Cooks so much or Jalen Tolbert so much that we're letting them spring free for a touchdown that looked like Rashid Shaheed's single coverage touchdown last week. You got to make the Cowboys work for it. If CeeDee Lamb's going to catch 10 passes in this game, make it be a 10-play scoring drive. Don't give away any freebies because you're so intent on worrying about him. Here's a good question here from Rendell C. He said, has the Marshawn saga reached Mike Thomas levels, not from a tension standpoint, but from a productivity stance? Seem as though he has become too unreliable to count on. I think it's fair. I think it's a fair
question.
It's a fair, even as a criticism, I think it's a fair statement at this point. You're going into year 3 of will he play, won't he play, will he play, won't he play. Hamstring might be a real issue. That aside, though, it's just a lot of not playing. Mike Thomas had real injuries too, and then that does become a drag on your team at a certain point because you're paying these people a lot of money to play and produce. Now, Mike last year had the deal, whatever, but before that, it kind of cuts out where you're spending money, where you're allocating your resources, and you're counting on him to be your CeeDee Lamb stopper. Now, if he's not out there and you have that money, you can pay somebody else to do that, or you can invest somewhere else on your team. You can't do that. So it is a hindrance and a drawback when a guy is playing 50% of the games going on 2 years, and now he misses pretty much all at camp. He's missing the most important game of the season right here, a chance to go out and really build real momentum. I mean, it's just it's reached a frustrating point, and I think it's kind of emblematic of his whole career. Like, it's just kind of, look, for his era, he's a top 5 guy, but like if he had just had a couple things go a little bit differently, I mean, I think it's just a different career.
You can't go into games being like, we're depending on him. You need to be like, it's a bonus if he plays. That's how you had to treat Mike Thomas late in his career. And ideally, the Saints need to be prepared. And look, they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry in the 2nd round this year when we already considered that a strength and we didn't know where he would fit. So I think they've acted accordingly. They've acted as though we're going to pretend like we're not set at that position, and that's the best they could do with it. But, yeah, financial decisions have to be made next year if this remains the norm.
Someone in the chat asked us what A.T. Perry's role will be today, considering he just walked by us with a bunch of diamond necklaces on and a pair of sneakers and no jersey or anything. I'm guessing he's going to be inactive today. So it looks like Mason Tipton will be up again today. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's passed by like that, and that's how it's going to be every single week. I wonder if Tipton's ahead of him on the depth chart. It looks like A.T. Perry still has that uphill battle. We talked about that throughout the training camp and OTAs and mini camp. Like, it was kind of just, it was a little bit uneven. I know he ended up being the preseason leader in receiving yards, I believe. But I think there's still a lot there to figure out.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that means Bub Means is ahead of him too. He was participating in practice all week. He wasn't limited in practice. I mean, he might be slightly behind because he had an injury. I still think it's practically a 3-way tie between those guys, but if you give an opening, that's enough of a tiebreaker right there. So I wonder how during a season, barring injuries, you can earn your way back into that rotation.
Working down the list here, Lattimore will be inactive today, so that is something that they're going to have to try to overcome. That's not a surprise at all. I think they prepared the whole entire week. I was told early in the week the hamstring injury isn't serious. He told us after the game the hamstring injury isn't serious. It's something that happened today. He did travel to the game, so I guess that's a little bit different than last year. Sometimes when he was injured last year, he stayed away. So that's at least somewhat of a positive sign. But yeah, I mean, I think the frustration levels here are got to be pretty high with him at this point.
Yeah, he's in the locker room all week. He was in the locker room post game when they were celebrating their victory. It's not like he's disassociating himself from the team. But yeah, obviously, from just an injury standpoint, he has always been a guy who, whether it's him or the trainers or agents, I don't know why, but he is a guy who he basically needs to be 100% before he goes. I guess that means when you see him out there, you're getting him at close to 100% health. But
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than just 100. I think it's more than that. Yeah. I mean, like the willingness to trade him. It's I think it's definitely something that's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Carrying on here. We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes here. We'll get the inactives in about 2 minutes. What are you? What's your prediction? What's your prediction for the game today?
I can't pick the Saints to win. I mean, I can't overreact to week one. I think I picked something like 24-16 Cowboys. Of course, I think the Saints have enough talent in the right spots to be competitive with anybody in the NFL. But there's just too many question marks where they have to handle some of the best mismatches in the NFL, and we went over them all. They're playing a good quarterback. They're playing a great receiver. They're playing an elite defensive line. They're playing a team that can force turnovers. They've got to be able to, like I said, you said it a million times, they've got to be able to be ahead or close in this game to have any chance.
Yeah, I got to predict Dallas here just a little bit because I'm nervous about Fuaga. I'm nervous about not having Lattimore. I think if you have both those guys, I would feel a little bit better about it. There is a weird thing, and I said this on our show Friday, just given how little we saw Marshawn during training camp, week one, it looked like he was working off a little bit of rust. There is like maybe an element here where if he wasn't like fully with his legs underneath him, maybe you're better off in a matchup like this. I'm not trying to find a silver lining there. Like I really kind of actually believe that. I thought there were a couple plays week one where he looked a little bit on Marshawn like didn't have his footing on a couple, slipped on a couple, was behind on a couple. It just wasn't. It didn't look quite as sticky as usual, but I think this game's actually going to be a rock fight. Like, I really do. I think it's going to be low scoring. This is the type of game where Dennis Allen typically shows out with his plans. I expect him to have a really good plan for CD, but as you mentioned, like, all it takes is one break and it can change the game. But I think it's going to be a low scoring affair. I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think they're going to have to kind of battle the whole entire time.
Two guys I'm probably most excited to watch today, Chase Young and Kool-Aid McKinstry. If you've come away from this game feeling good about those two guys, you feel better about the season, period.
And Spencer Rattler will also be inactive today as the emergency quarterback. So kind of the same thing we saw last week. No real major surprises there. So, yeah, I mean, that still doesn't matter to me. That's still one of them storylines that I think is a little bit overblown overall. Like, it just doesn't – they're developing them both, and we see it in practice every day. It's hard to even tell who's QB2 on a given day sometimes because they're rotating so much.
Yep,
and
they're developing both.
Yeah, like going back to previous years, it would be Derek Carr throws, number 2 throws, third guy's watching. And we see them switch every single time. It almost seems like difficult for them to script how the reps are going. And then it flips. Like whoever's doing one thing one day on Thursday, the other guy's doing it. And then Friday it's back to them. Saturday we aren't out there. So, yeah, I mean, those are kind of the things that we're seeing. You got the rest of the inactives there?
Yeah, DeMarco Jackson as expected. Jalen Ford, even though he was questionable. Colin Saunders already ruled out. A.T. Perry, as you said. Marshawn Lattimore, as you said. 18 as the third quarterback. That means we're going to see Dallin Holker's NFL debut. That means we're going to see John Ridgway's Saints debut.
This means
others.
Brzee up. He was questionable.
Yeah. Foskey's up. He was questionable.
So both of them. Foskey will probably have a big role on special teams again. So, I mean, I know on defense it is what it is, but him being a core special teams guy, that's kind of important. Brzee being up, I think, is very important. So, yeah, going to see what this one is. We're going to wrap this up here. Make sure you are on our website. We're going to have our post-game show after the game, after we write our stories. That'll be available only to NOF members until about 4 o'clock tomorrow. If you aren't signed up for the site, jump on the NewOrleans.Football/subscribe. Use the code SOBACK, 20% off your first payment. It's $9 a month. That would take it down to $7.20 for the first month. Or you can sign up for the year. It'd be $71. I promise that we work as hard as we can to make sure that it is worth it every single month. So make sure you're locked in for that. You'll get all of our news, our analysis. You get the live shows every single time. The podcast goes out without the ad breaks. So that's a better experience, too, for everybody. So we're going to see what they can do here. We're going to wrap up, and we'll have our live blog on the site. So stick with us all afternoon. We're going to have the live updates and analysis all throughout the game. So, yeah, keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football. We'll talk to you after the game.